From Operation Varsity, your biggest aerial landing, much bigger even than Arnhem. And here we can see a convoy coming in here. These are men of the 29th Division, the guys who landed on Omaha. They're advancing with some light ahead of them, and in the rear they've got Infantry. One is in British markings, 7th Armoured Use Chappies as their reconnaissance vehicle, so it looks as if they've stumbled on a German emplacement. These troops might be Panzer Grenadiers, they might be Hitler Youth, they might even be Luftwaffe police, but they're pressed into service to defend the homeland, the fatherland. Now we can see the 29th are laying down, suppressing fire on the German position. We've got grenades going out. Some of these young Germans will be no older than 16, 17 years old, ex-Hitler Youth, pressed into service the negotiating table, and then Hitler could persuade them to turn against the real enemy, which he saw as the Soviet Union. So whether these young Germans buy into that theory, whether they're simply afraid of what might happen if they try and get home to have you with the notices around their neck saying this coward refused to fight for the fatherland. We don't know. There's going to be many ideas, many emotions going through their heads, in much the same way as our young Americans here did good service in North Africa. In fact, it's mounting a 20mm cannon, so still a dangerous bit of kit. Getting a bit elderly now. In the rear, we've got a 251. Yes. Which, if they've got access to a 251, the so-called Hanomag, because only the Panzer Grenadiers really had access to that kind of transport. And in the middle, of course, there is a Tiger II, the so-called King Tiger, König Tiger. Now that gives the Germans not only impressive firepower, that 88mm there is a vicious piece of equipment, but also gives them, we've seen no deployment of American anti-tank guns. The American light armor is deploying away from the King Tiger. That's absolutely reasonable. There's nothing. Logistically, that was bad news for the Germans. That was using up ammunition they didn't need to use. You can't kill one person 1,200 times. The much slower firing Brownings or Brens with the British were just as effective, but somewhat less terrifying. Now you can see that the 222 and the 251 have added camouflage to break up their silhouette. They're very aware of one thing. They might outgun this particular probe from the Americans. The 29th here might be on the back foot slightly. What they don't do is they don't control the air. You can bet every minute or two each one of those German soldiers is flicking his eyes upwards. He's looking to see the sunlight reflecting off an Allied aircraft. They used to say with dark humour, if you look up in the sky and you see a brown aeroplane, it's British. If you see a silver aeroplane, it's American. If you don't see an aeroplane, it's German. That was their idea of a sort of dark soldier's joke. One Typhoon pilot reckoned that his aircraft carried the same broadside as a light cruiser. So one of those let it rip at you was going to nothing that the Americans can do to neutralise that King Tiger. I'm looking across, I can just see the tip of one of it. Vehicle and find themselves in control of what is really a very complex and very difficult vehicle to deal with, King Tiger. So maybe there's a slight chance that we've got a group in there who are maybe not that battle hardened. Having said that, they could be veterans from Panzerlehrer. We really don't know. Now the Germans are bringing forward Panzer Grenadiers. They are checking the ground out. Remember, they know this ground. It's their ground. And as I said before, they are determined to make the armies pay in blood for every metre that they seize. Without reinforcement, that's not going to be very many meters, I fear. But, ladies and gentlemen, here we can see those radio messages did not go unheeded. We've got some American armour coming in. A couple of Shermans be better able to take on the heavy armour on the King Tiger. It's going to be nip and tuck, it really is. What we actually need here is a Firefly, but we haven't got one, so we're going to make good with what we've got. Now, we've got an American mortar firing on the Germans. The Americans are putting down suppressing fire. The Americans they were taught in infantry school a simple mantra: find them, fix them, flank them, finish them. Right? Well, they found them all right, or the Germans found them. They've got to now fix them in position. And when they've done that, they must flank the position and then bring up suppressing fire to finish off the battle. So we'll see how we go on. That King Tiger is going to be a real thorn in the flesh now. If he gets a direct hit on any of the American armour, that's not so good. Right, now the 29th are advancing. You can see an NCO there, the Tommy gun, the Thompson. The Germans have taken over a deserted village to get some cover from incoming small arms fire. But that King Tiger is still dominating the battlefield. Come on, we need a flight of Typhoons. Where are you, RAF? Oh, well, we have to wait another day for that. Oh, more incoming fire. Keep their heads down, guys. There's a BAR, Browning automatic rifle going off there. A2. It's moving into a position. Don't let yourself get hit, guys. Well, not really the one in front of me anyway. Now we've got a smoke marker down. This is marking the position for artillery. Okay, we've got some very brave GIs there, getting very close to that monster. As you can see now, they're flanking the Germans in the village. Get that suppressing fire down on them. The King Tiger seems to be struggling to find a target. Maybe I was right, maybe they are. An inexperienced crew. Here comes the M5. Distracting thing to think that the gun on the M5 was designed originally by the Americans as an anti-tank killer. You compare that with the gun on the King Tiger, you begin to realise how things changed during the war. The OC's coming round, followed by the Jeep, coming more to fire. Hello, we've got it hit. Right, there are rounds coming down on the village. The Americans in street fighting now. Grenades, bayonets. Come on guys, remember, don't run into your own grenade blast. Common mistake amongst young recruits. The Germans have surrendered. It's interesting, if you read the accounts quite often, once the enemy had surrendered, particularly once the Germans surrendered, it became very clear as to where their background was. Some would refuse medical attention, they would spit out medicines they were given, they would abuse nurses who were trying to treat them in American field hospitals. Others would do everything they possibly could. They would act as stretcher bearers for the Americans, for the British, to try and prove in a sense that they were not Nazis, they were simply Germans doing what people do to defend their own homeland. Given the sheer numbers that were sort of rolling in towards them, the British in the north, the Americans in the south, the Russians from the west, the east. But in the end, that King Tiger didn't prove to be as decisive as may have been hoped. Perhaps it was that the Nazis put too much faith in Wunderwaffen, in wonder weapons, big tanks, rockets and what have you, but ultimately it was the sheer numbers, the sheer economic power, which meant they were never really going to be in a position to win. So there goes the M5. Deuce and a half. Deuce and a half, interesting enough, was the basis of the famous Duck. The Duck amphibian was basically that lorry with a boat's hull put on it. So, Germans have left the field. We've got, I'll tell you about this, at least one Canadian on that GMC. Well done, I think. Every 11 walking in, they put together this display for us, give us a real feel must be sometimes ironic that when you watch the film The Battle of the Bulge, the chappie stands in for the Sherman in it. You get an idea of the difference in size when you see them together. So, there's Fury forming up. Fury, an excellent example of how the Americans continually upgraded and improved. The Sherman was designed as around about 30-ton tank, so it made it easier to transport overseas. That limited how much you could upgrade it, but they did the best they could. They improved the suspension, they improved the gun, they improved the turret, and they were able to do that so that by the end of the war, tanks that looked a lot like Fury were as good as anything really realistically on the battlefield. There they go, give a cheer, give the Canadians a cheer. We like the Canadians. Idiot. But equally, if you're a Parisian, think what you feel when the Germans coming in are actually manned by French troops, the Leclerc's Armoured Division. So here they come. Again, give them a cheer, they've won the war for you. There they go. Yeah. They're the young people who took part in World War II, fighting for a belief, for democracy, fighting for other people's freedom, not just their own. And I think it behoves us, particularly this year, to remember that. So we'll just pause a moment while they leave the arena